Well, welcome everybody. It's hard to believe we're already past the halfway point of this series. And whether you've been with us from the beginning or you're just jumping in, I'm really glad that you're here. This week, we're diving into something that sounds simple, but can feel surprisingly rare in the world right now: kindness. And I'm not just talking about being nice, polite, or maybe having good manners. This isn't about holding the door or saying bless you when someone sneezes. Those are all fine. But that's not the kind of kindness we're after. We're talking about real Jesus like kindness. When I was a young preacher, maybe 23, 24 years old, there was a guy in the church that would always look like he was just really, really angry all the time. And the way I could tell that he was mad is he had this vein in his head right there that would pop out when he was mad. And so clearly, I was 23, 24. I was a young punk, and I would say stuff to him just to see if I could get that vein to pop out. So one day I'm standing at the main door of the church with Mad Vane Guy, and I saw a guest get out of her car. And the reason I knew she was a guest is because she didn't look like any of the other ladies there. All the ladies there were wearing really nice dresses. They were all carrying big Bibles, like big ones like the size of a Honda Civic. And this lady, she didn't have a Bible. Her clothes weren't very nice, and it kind of looked like she might have worn them the night before. And her body language said, I am scared to death to walk in here. And as she came to our church door, angry Vane Guy stepped in front of me, and I will never forget this. And he opened the door and he looked at this young woman and he said, Young lady, we wear our best for God at this church. So she did in that moment what you'd think she'd do. She turned and ran back to her car. And I literally ran and tried to stop her, but it was too late. She was too ashamed, too embarrassed, and she drove away. And I know she had to be feeling unwanted and rejected. And I'm telling you, that broke my heart. Because the message she walked away with was, if this is what church is, I'm out. Why? Because what happened that day wasn't just uncomfortable, it wasn't kind, and it certainly wasn't Jesus like. That's where this message hits home. Because if we're honest, the world doesn't just need more Christians sitting in churches saying they believe in Jesus with their nice clothes and their big Bibles. It needs more Christians who are actually like Jesus. In Galatians 5:22 through 23, Paul lists kindness as a fruit of the Spirit. He said in Galatians, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self control. Kindness, that's not something we force or fake, but something that naturally flows when we live in step with God's Spirit. But kindness often gets misunderstood. Some think that kindness is weak or it's permissive, that being kind means letting people off the hook when you shouldn't. But kindness isn't the same as niceness. Niceness is about just being agreeable or keeping the peace or making sure we look good to other people. Kindness, though, that's something else. Kindness is rooted in the word kin, meaning family, humankind. It's about treating people with the dignity that they were created with. It's not just helpful, it's who we were designed to be. When we're kind, we are most fully human. There's a story in John chapter 8 where Jesus is confronted with a woman caught in the very act of adultery. Pretty awkward. But the religious leaders drag her in there anyway, and they are ready to stone her like their law said they should. And they use this woman to challenge Jesus to pick between love and law. And what does Jesus do? Well, first, he kneels down, twice, by the way. He lowers himself physically and socially, and he writes in the dirt. Then he stands up and says in John chapter 8, verse 7, let the one without sin cast the first stone. And one by one, the lady's accusers walk away. And then when it's just Jesus and the woman left, he says to her in verse 11, neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin. That is kindness. He didn't condone what she was doing, but he didn't condemn her either. He defended her publicly, and then he spoke truth to her privately. That's grace and truth. fully present together. And here's the point: when we separate people from their sin, when we see them for who they are rather than what they've done, we're finally free to act in true kindness. And the truth is, some of us struggle to do that. We hold on to the metaphorical rock, wanting people to face the consequences. Why? Because holding the rock makes us sometimes feel superior or like we have it together. But Jesus, who had every right to hold the rock, put it down. He saw the woman, he saw her need, and he chose compassion and kindness. And here's what's wild: neuroscience backs that up. Studies show that acts of true kindness release a flood of chemicals in our bodies: serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. That improves our mood, and it reduces our stress, and it increases our health. In fact, the only thing that compares to that chemical release is a mother nursing her newborn. That's how powerful our bodies are wired to benefit from kindness. But kindness requires humility. It requires us to serve instead of being served, to elevate other people instead of elevating ourselves. And so here's the big idea: Christ-like kindness humbles itself, sees others made in God's image, and puts down the rock. Yes, it speaks the truth, but never without grace. And in a world full of noise and division and cruelty, what our world needs now is more people like that. More people like Jesus. Are you ready to be that kind of human? That's going to take some work. So let's go to work as we go through this week's study questions and as we work through putting this into action that we learn about in our series guide. I'll see you next session.